It's been far too long since I've reviewed a shmup, so what better way to get back in the shooting groove than with one of the rarest titles ever released on the Super Nintendo. It's Aero Fighters, and boy does this one command a premium. For some reason, this game received a fairly small production run for the North American market, and over the years, the price has steadily climbed. A loose copy can go for around $400 as of this video. Aero Fighters is a vertical scrolling shooter originating in arcades in 1992 and released on the SNES a year later. I'm a big fan of the sequel and was stoked to finally track down the original a few years ago. You start by choosing one of 4 characters representing one of 4 countries, each with their own unique military aircraft. The characters differ in their primary attack, their bombs, and their speed. The characters also have their own story of sorts that plays out between the stages. You can level up your primary weapon 3 times, along with a temporary 4th level. Depending on the character you select, you'll have either a fairly focused, powerful shot, or shots that cover more screen real estate at the expense of being less powerful. High-End is my favorite, as his primary fire also includes some homing missiles, which are always helpful when you aren't terribly good at these types of games. A unique trait to Aero Fighters is that the levels are presented in a different order depending on the character you select. The game also gets more difficult as you progress, so the enemy placement in stages will be different depending on which character you choose. This gives the game a little bit of extra replayability. Aero Fighters features responsive controls with a normal 8-way directional control. The hitbox on your jet also feels correct, and you'll rarely feel you were killed unfairly. The title also does a good job of throwing enough power-ups at you so you can quickly regain full power after dying. Like most shmups, Aero Fighters is a difficult game. I can make it to the final level if I max out my extra lives and continues, but I still cannot beat it. Depending on your familiarity with the genre, your mileage will vary. Aero Fighters requires a bit of level memorization and plenty of trial and error, as most enemy bullets in the later stages move much faster than you can possibly react. If you're trying to get into the genre, this might not be the best place to start. Graphically, Aero Fighters has a good art direction and a solid frame rate, especially for a Super Nintendo game. Still, everything does feel a bit on the simple side, and this is also true of the sequels. Aero Fighters on the SNES can't match up to the Neo Geo sequels, but I'd say it comes closer than I expected. The music quality is good, and the melodies do a good job of matching the environment they play on. Still, this is not something you would listen to outside the game. It's actually kinda hard to pinpoint anything Aero Fighters does especially well. Nothing really stands out at all. A few of the buildings in the background can be destroyed, but other levels feature virtually no background at all. The entire game is drenched in bland at times. Aero Fighters is a competent shmup, but fails to stand out against a plethora of other excellent shmups on the SNES itself, not to mention the TurboGrafx-16 and Sega Genesis. The graphics and sound are average, and the gameplay has no real hooks that help it stand out above the rest. Shmup should be exciting, and this really isn't. Aero Fighters certainly isn't worth the astronomical price it goes for. The Japanese version of the game, called Sonic Wings, goes for a fraction of the price and is a lot easier to recommend. Fans of Japanese shmup should have no problems dropping $30 on this and getting their money's worth. However, if you aren't a hardcore fan of the genre, pass on Aero Fighters.